If you follow the news and you live in Alberta, you will be aware of the fact that there's an enormous controversy brewing there right now about a curriculum rewrite that the current government has done. I have never seen the outrage over new curriculum that I've seen in Alberta, and I'm not here to explain why it's going on. I'm in the process of reading through the curriculum guide, and I have not come up with firm conclusions yet. One thing, though, that I will highlight is this. Apparently, the negative response to the curriculum emerged from some parties before they even had an opportunity to read the new curriculum. Why would that happen? Why would someone be outraged about something they hadn't actually seen in detail? Well, sadly, it's a tendency that we see expressed quite often in all kinds of settings, and it's really a product of prejudice. In other words, because this person produced this piece of writing or is responsible for this activity or whatever, that activity or that work or that opinion must be bad because of who expressed it. The reason why I use that as an example is that there is currently a conversation going on in culture about racism. And it's a justified conversation because there is no question that there are groups in our country and in all countries of the world that are disadvantaged primarily because of a quality that they have no control over, such as their ethnic group. And throughout history, we have stories about ethnic groups that were oppressed, that were disadvantaged, that were dehumanized. It isn't just a product of the 20th century or the 21st century. It is a product of human history. And if we're going to understand the root of this, we have to go into the human heart and find something there that is very, very dark. And to oversimplify it, it is this tendency to have to find ways of dehumanizing others in order to fully humanize yourself. In other words, we have to devalue people around us because they're different for whatever reason, or because we feel intimidated by them, in order for us to maintain our sense of value. Or we see we can advantage ourselves by disadvantaging others, and so we do so. It's interesting when you read the Old Testament how often the prophets railed against the exploitation of the weak, of the marginalized, of the powerless, of the foreigner, of the widow, of the orphan. And one of the most wretched things that the people of Israel did that led to their exile was exploit the powerless for their benefit. And so God hates human oppression. He hates dehumanization. But it is very, very, very important that before we take up signs and begin to march against others who are behaving that way, we need to stop and look at ourselves. We need to stop and recognize that within every human heart is this impulse to disadvantage others for my advantage, whatever that might be. And until we recognize that that is a battle that we are experiencing in our own lives, and then begin to find a way to changing our own hearts, I don't think there's a lot of hope in changing the general thrust of culture. And the best example of a human being who was profoundly disadvantaged and dehumanized because he was a threat to others, at least perceived as one, is Jesus Christ. If you study his trial and his crucifixion, it is a casebook of profound dehumanization. Everything about crucifixion was intended to humiliate and shame the person being executed. And then his trial himself, the trial that he had was an effort to do everything in the power of the group that put him on trial to make him worthy of the worst treatment. And it's very interesting that when you read the New Testament narrative about the crucifixion, there's a really powerful passage that says, Pilate knew that the reason why Jesus was brought before him was out of envy. Envy. A desire to have what somebody else has. A hatred toward them because they have it and you don't. An advantage that someone else might have that you try to take away from them so that you can advantage yourself. This is dark stuff. And it brings me to this. As you work with students, especially students that are really hyper aware of oppression and injustice in the world in which they are living, bring them to themselves first. Lead them in the uncomfortable exercise of recognizing methods of dehumanization that exist within their own lives. Help them to see their innate insecurity that leads them to try to pull other people down in whatever way they can, either by attacking their reputation, by maligning their character, or by actually using violence. I don't know what method is used, but there is this heart-level brokenness in all of us that seeks to advantage ourselves in a way that must involve the disadvantaging of others. I am so thankful that I serve a God who chose to disadvantage himself to advantage me. I am so thankful I serve a God who said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they are doing, when they were mocking him and dehumanizing him on the cross. And I believe that if we are going to help others find a way beyond racism, find a way beyond bullying, find a way beyond dehumanization, it's going to start at the cross of Jesus Christ.